Hello, everyone. She was on the cover of a major fashion magazine at 15, walked for Chanel at 16, pregnant at 17, forgotten by 18. Beverly Peele wasn't just a rising star, she was a symbol. A teenage black girl with bone structure sharp enough to cut through every industry barrier. She didn't knock on the door of high fashion, she kicked it open. In the 1990s, she was everywhere. Vogue, Elle, Mademoiselle. Her face was the future. And for a moment, it felt like the world finally wanted someone who looked like her. But behind the flashbulbs, something else was happening. The innocence they praised was the same thing they exploited. She was overworked, underprotected, and constantly surrounded by adults who saw her as product, not person. When she became a mother before turning 18, the calls stopped. The contracts vanished. She hadn't changed, but her usefulness had. Years later, she told the truth. About power, about silence, about a man with money and influence. About what really happens when you grow up inside an industry that treats girls like fantasy until they become inconvenient. This isn't a scandal story, it's the story of a system, and of a woman who found her voice after the world stopped listening. It all started in Los Angeles, before the world knew her name. Beverly Peele was born in Los Angeles in 1975, into a city that glamorized dreams and erased struggle. She was raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly to hold the family together, balancing multiple jobs while trying to shield her daughter from the dangers that lived just beyond their apartment walls. Money was tight, conversations were practical, emotion wasn't discouraged, but it wasn't something they had time for. From an early age, Beverly learned how to watch before speaking, how to listen before reacting, how to navigate a world that didn't always feel safe. Even as a child, she stood out. She was tall, willowy, with a face that seemed sculpted for the camera, long before she ever stepped in front of one. Neighbors, teachers, strangers in grocery store lines, they all said the same thing: she should be a model. But Beverly didn't chase beauty, it chased her. By the time she was 11, she was already posing for local catalogs. By 12, she had signed with a modeling agency. The grown-up world opened its doors not because she was ready, but because she was marketable. She didn't have a childhood in the traditional sense. Her classmates went to school dances, she went to castings. They studied algebra. She studied her angles. At 13, she was working full-time. At 14, she was flying coast to coast. She smiled on cue, wore clothes she didn't choose, stood under lights for hours while grown men discussed her body like a product. She didn't complain. She didn't push back. She thought this was normal. There were no managers, no mentors. Her mother, proud and hopeful, trusted that the agencies knew what they were doing. But Beverly was still a child moving through adult spaces, absorbing adult expectations, without the emotional armor to protect herself. The industry praised her professionalism, her poise, her natural confidence, but they never stopped to ask how much of it was real and how much was survival. She was barely a teenager, and the world was already demanding she act like a woman. So she did, not because she understood what it meant, but because no one gave her time to figure it out. The break came fast, too fast for anyone, especially Beverly, to fully grasp what it meant. She was 14 when she landed her first major cover, 15 when she appeared on the front of Mademoiselle magazine, making her one of the youngest black models to ever do so. Suddenly, the girl who was skipping class for photo shoots was being called the future of fashion. Agencies pushed her to the front of every room. Editors wanted her on every page. Designers booked her for shows before she could even vote. She didn't audition for success. It found her. One minute she was a teenager wearing braces, and the next she was walking for Chanel, Versace, and Isaac Mizrahi. Naomi Campbell was already a legend, but Beverly was being hailed as the next generation softer, younger, more American. And while the praise came fast, so did the pressure. She was expected to be flawless, tireless, and grateful, always grateful, even when she was exhausted, even when she was confused, even when she didn't feel safe. She started appearing in Vogue, Elle, 17, walking in Paris, Milan, New York. Her face was everywhere on buses, billboards, department store walls. But no one stopped to ask how she was handling it. No one questioned what it meant to be 15, living out of suitcases, surrounded by adults, with no pause button. She was told she was lucky, and in some ways, she was. But luck doesn't protect you from being overexposed, or overwhelmed, or overlooked as a human being. She was making money, but not decisions. Everything from her hair to her shoes to her facial expression was directed by someone else. She was praised for being mature beyond her years. But what they called maturity was really compliance. She was a child trained to perform like a grown woman. And then, at 17, she got pregnant. The headlines didn't come with congratulations. The industry turned cold, bookings slowed, campaigns disappeared. It wasn't just that she was becoming a mother, it was that she was no longer the fantasy. She had grown up too soon, and the industry suddenly wasn't interested. No one prepared her for the climb, and no one warned her how fast the fall could come. For a brief, glittering moment, Beverly Peele was everywhere. She wasn't just working, she was dominating. On the runway, her walk was effortless, fluid, undeniable. In print, her face exuded both innocence and command. She graced the covers of Vogue, Elle, Cosmopolitan, and Glamour before she was even old enough to rent a car. Her presence was a paradox teenage softness wrapped in grown woman elegance. The industry couldn't get enough. She walked in Paris for Chanel, in Milan for Gianni Versace, and in New York for Donna Karan and Todd Oldham. Designers praised her instinct, photographers chased her light, stylists built entire campaigns around her. She wasn't just another model, she was a muse, one who looked like the future, while also being too young to understand the present. At the height of her fame, Beverly represented something rare, a young Black woman at the center of mainstream fashion, unfiltered and unapologetic. She didn't speak loudly, but her image said everything. Her look wasn't just beautiful, it was revolutionary. She was proof that a Black teenager could redefine what luxury looked like. For a generation of girls, she was the first reflection of themselves on the pages of fashion's most elite publications. But even as the world watched her rise, Beverly was still trying to find her footing. Fame came before confidence. Exposure came before self-protection. She was styled, flown, filmed, and praised, but rarely asked if she was okay. Everyone saw the photos. No one saw the fatigue. Everyone saw the glow. No one saw the confusion. At 16, she was being told to flirt in front of the camera. At 17, she was expected to represent an entire demographic. At 18, she was a mother. And even then, she showed up, she posed, she walked, she smiled. Because the industry didn't care about circumstances. It only cared that the fantasy remained intact. And for a while, Beverly kept it alive. But fantasies don't last forever, especially not for the girls expected to carry them. For years, Beverly Peele played the part, the flawless face, the effortless walk, the girl who made fashion look easy. But beneath the glamour, something had begun to fracture. The spotlight that once felt warm now burned, and the silence she had carried for so long began to ache. What had once been compliance began to feel like complicity, and Beverly, now older, no longer a teenage muse, but a woman, decided to speak. She started small. In interviews, she hinted at the pressure, the manipulation, the loneliness of growing up in an industry that praised her image but ignored her pain. She talked about becoming a mother at 17 and being treated like she had broken the spell. She spoke about being discarded, not because she changed, but because the fantasy changed without her. And then, years later, she said something more. In 2021, Beverly went public with allegations that shook the very foundation of fashion's carefully curated silence. She accused a powerful man in the industry, a former fashion executive and reality TV star, of assaulting her decades earlier, when she was just a teenager. The story made headlines, but the industry responded with measured distance. There were no public statements, no designers rallying to her side, just the familiar quiet that follows every uncomfortable truth in fashion. But Beverly didn't retreat. She had spent years building her voice, and now she refused to lose it. She gave interviews. She stood by her words. She named names. And in doing so, she joined a lineage of women in fashion who had once been praised for their silence and punished the moment they broke it. Her defiance wasn't loud, it wasn't orchestrated, it was raw, honest, or sometimes shaky, but it was hers. She spoke not to destroy anyone, but to reclaim herself, to say finally that what happened wasn't her fault, that survival was not shame, that beauty never gave anyone permission to harm. Beverly Peele was never just a pretty face. She was a survivor. And speaking the unspeakable was her most powerful pose of all. After the headlines faded, Beverly Peele was left alone with the echoes. The industry that once embraced her beauty now met her truth with silence. Not denial, not outrage, just absence. Jobs dried up, editors stopped calling, designers moved on to newer faces, safer names. There was no formal exile, just a slow, cold drifting away. She hadn't broken any laws. She had only broken the illusion. What followed wasn't scandal, it was erasure. For years, Beverly drifted in and out of the public eye. She raised her children. She worked when she could. She took small roles, appeared in the occasional campaign, and smiled through interviews that never asked the questions she most needed to answer. People spoke of her in the past tense, as if she were a name from another time, a face from a decade fashion didn't want to remember. The bravery of her voice was met with the cruelty of being forgotten. She struggled financially. At one point, she faced eviction. In interviews, she admitted to being overwhelmed, broken down, unsure of where the next check would come from. And yet, she didn't ask for pity. She asked for recognition. That what she endured was real, that what she gave to the industry had value beyond a photo spread or a perfume ad. Behind the scenes, she was still fighting. For herself, for her children, for other girls coming up behind her who might not know the cost of being chosen too young, too fast. She began mentoring, speaking, appearing in documentaries that asked hard questions about power and exploitation. She never claimed to be perfect. She only claimed to have survived something no one wanted to name out loud. Her collapse didn't look like a scandal splashed across tabloids. It looked like a quiet woman walking away from a world that once worshipped her, because she finally realized it never protected her. Beverly Peele wasn't destroyed, she was dismissed, and somehow that hurt more. Beverly Peele may not be the name the industry chooses to celebrate, but she is the name it cannot erase. Her image helped shape the face of 90s fashion. Her presence made room for a generation of Black girls who had never seen themselves on the cover of Vogue. And her voice, shaky, raw, and brave, pierced through the silence that had swallowed so many. She didn't get the farewell campaign, the comeback walk, the glossy redemption arc. But what she gave was something harder. She gave the truth. She spoke it when it cost her everything. And she kept speaking even when no one clapped. Her legacy is not just in the photos. It's in the questions she forced the industry to face. It's in the girls she warned, the systems she challenged, the myths she shattered. She was never just a model. She was a warning wrapped in beauty. Maybe she didn't disappear. Maybe we just didn't want to see her.